Thank you for joining us for the August Gate Equity webinar. This is our summer session, so this link does not extend beyond today. We want to encourage you to register for the rest of the year, so make sure that you get that link and that you can register for our other webinars for next month in September. I'm Kathy Anderson, OSPI Graduation Equity Program Supervisor, and today's topic is Attendance 101, One District's Approach to Supporting Attendance. We chose this topic because attendance is the front line for every school. You can't teach students who aren't there. This is a hot topic in Washington, and we're exploring the wide variety of ways that our schools encourage students to attend, hopefully to inspire and nudge you to take a deeper look at how your school is handling attendance. Did you know that our webinars are all posted on our YouTube channel? OSPI has a YouTube channel. It's super cool. So if you want great ideas from Washington schools, you should definitely subscribe. And it's really easy. It's just youtube.com/OSPI. Our objectives for today are to understand high leverage attendance supports and why they matter. And we're going to learn from Vancouver School District how they supported attendance district-wide. And we're going to offer you some great attendance resources to get you started. I'm joined today by Krissy Johnson. She's our attendance program supervisor here at OSPI. And we want to highlight living examples of best practice in the field. And we brought our friends from Vancouver School District. We have Trish, Paliado, Director of Student Welfare and Attendance, and Rachel Cason, their Student Success Coordinator. Thank you guys so much for making time to be here. Your work is really inspiring to us. At OSPI, we envision all students prepared for post-secondary pathways, careers, and civic engagement. And we have developed an equity statement that we think helps frame our webinars. We believe each student, family, and community possesses strengths and cultural knowledge that benefit their peers, educators, and schools. It's essential that every education leader examines the way current policies and practices result in disparate outcomes for our students and works to intentionally consider historical contexts and ways to partner in decision-making and ways to dismantle systemic barriers so that students in our schools can access instruction and support. And here at Gate Equity Webinar, we are here to help. This webinar is brought to you through the Office of System and School Improvement. And we are going to offer a second webinar this afternoon on engaging families through community cafes. And this webinar is going to be at 3 o'clock, and we have our continuous improvement partner, Catherine Page, here. And she's an education coach with the state, and she has great ideas. She's actually put on these cafes, and she's a great resource. You can learn more this afternoon. Next month, we are going to be talking about school climate, and we're going to get these links to you so you can register for those. And that will kind of subscribe you for the year, so make sure that you take advantage of that. We're going to start our first poll. We just want to know who is here, and if you have comprehensive or targeted supports through OSPI, those are the identified schools, and how familiar you are with this topic. And you can let us know, and we usually use this information to try to tailor our information to who's in the room and give you what you need. And as we go, we're going to use our polling slides as a good stopping place to kind of add those questions from the chat and from the questions box. So if you have a specific question you want to ask one of our presenters, use that questions box so that we can monitor more carefully the questions you want answered at that time. And it looks like you can see we have some teachers with us today. We have some administrators, and it looks like some people are not sure if they've been identified. And we have some people who are somewhat, so we've got a nice kind of mixture of who's familiar with the topic. Thank you for participating in our poll. And next, we're going to go to Krissy Johnson. And Krissy, can you tell us a little bit about chronic absenteeism? Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Kathy. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for taking the time out of this really, really busy season and getting ready for school. Much appreciated. I'm going to start with some basics. You probably already know this, but as chronic absenteeism is a newer concept, I want to start with just the definition. So when we talk about students that are chronically absent, we're talking about not just unexcused absences, but excused as well. So we're looking at all absences, in particular when students miss 10% or more of their school days. And I want to take a second to talk about how OSPI reports chronic absence. So again, students that are chronically absent are missing 10% or more of their school days. And then OSPI reports regular attendance, and our regular attendance metric is the opposite or the inverse of chronic absence. So a student that is a regular attender is present for 90% or more of their school days. Your regular attendance rate, when you look at the OSPI report card, is the percentage of students that are not chronically absent, or your percentage of students that are regular attenders. So I want to take a second to highlight the research that is driving why we really care about attendance so much. I've highlighted a couple of the key pieces of research, and I'm going to go ahead and take a second to read through them. So one research study showed that students that are chronically absent in preschool, kindergarten, and first grade, any one of those grades, are much less likely to be reading at grade level by the third grade. Another research study by the Grade Level Reading Campaign showed that students who can't read at grade level by the end of third grade are 4 times more likely than proficient readers to not graduate. And another one to highlight for older students, a student that is chronically absent in any 2 years between 8th and 12th grade has a 50% chance of not finishing high school. I want to take a second to highlight our statewide data. So this is from 2017-18. Our state data shows that 83% of students, all students, are regularly attending, which means that 17% are chronically absent. Our highest rates of regular attendance are seen in our Asian students and students that do not qualify for free and reduced lunch. Asian students have a 90% regular attendance rate, and non-low income students have an 88% regular attendance rate. Our most impacted students are students that are experiencing homelessness. So 59% are regular attenders. Our American Indian students, 65% of them are regular attenders, and our Pacific Islanders, 70% are regular attenders. You may be aware that the Healthy Youth Survey has several attendance-related questions. One of them I would like to highlight is the question that is intended to capture chronic absence. And that is when students say they missed 3 or more days of school in the last month. And so I wanted to highlight for 8th graders, 15% of them said that they missed 3 or more days of school in the last month. This slide is from Attendance Works, and I think it captures really well the number of factors or reasons that students potentially are absent. On the left, you've got myths and misperceptions, so things like attendance only matters in the older grades, then barriers such as an unsafe path to school. There are factors that fall under the category of negative school experiences, like an undiagnosed disability, and then reasons that fall under not being engaged. And it's not, this category isn't about students choosing not to be engaged. We think about it more as the necessary conditions for them to engage might not be there. So for instance, their classes might not be challenging, culturally responsive, or engaging, or they might not have meaningful relationships with adults at school. So all of these factors are important to consider when we're tackling attendance. Many of you already know this because it outlines the ways in which we as educators and administrators can design our response. I think it also highlights how attendance is such a powerful signal and how contextual it might be depending on your school, your community, the family, and the student. I'd like to highlight broadly how we've seen both in the research and in conversations with schools and districts in Washington have seen success in ensuring regular attendance for their students through the framework of multi-tiered systems of support. These elements are teams that are looking at data, monitoring data daily and weekly, leadership that prioritizes attendance and provides supports, engaging families in a supportive fashion, partnering with community businesses and agencies, and then lastly, a tiered approach that provides supports according to the student's need. Briefly, I would like to highlight a couple of those effective strategies within a tiered model. Tier 1, some of those strategies include defining and teaching good attendance, celebrating and incentivizing good attendance, and ensuring a positive climate that engages and partners with students and families. Some Tier 2 examples for students with higher rates of absences, reaching out to those students at the beginning of the year or as their absences increase throughout the year, and checking in with those students, addressing barriers, creating a plan to check in throughout the year. And you'll see I put nudge letters both as a Tier 2 and a Tier 1 support. They can be used for all students. They could be used just with students with at-risk attendance. And nudge letters are an effective evidence-based strategy. We put an article about them in our OSPI newsletter, which went out last week. We had a great webinar last Monday where Catherine Page talked about nudge letters in Toppenish. If you have questions or are interested in nudge letters, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to chat with you more and send you samples. And then lastly, tier 3 supports for students that are chronically absent or severely chronically absent include case management and coordination with your community partners and agencies. For example, if a student has a mental health or substance use need that would require supports outside of the school building. Lastly, before we bring in our district partners, I'd just like to take a moment and share OSPI's vision and purpose in highlighting attendance. For us, attendance in and of itself is not the goal. Our goal is engaged learners that are on a pathway to being career and college ready. So what will it take for us to get there? Continuing the shift from unexcused absences, only focusing on truancy, to focusing on all absences. It will take shifting from a focus on compliance and accountability to the mindset of we want you here so that you are learning and building skills to become an adult. It will also take shifting from absence being the sole responsibility of students and families and thinking about all of those factors that I talked about earlier and how being curious about all possible influences, such as what's happening in the classroom or other conditions in the school. And lastly, it will require shifting from a reactive approach to building a process that uses attendance as an early warning signal so that we can prevent and intervene early.
In the chat, we'd love to hear from you. What's your biggest challenge with attendance? And this is to help Krissy. Krissy is in the business of barrier reduction. So if there's something that she can do that might help you specifically, we would love to hear about that. And just so that people are aware, the PowerPoint is posted right now on the OSPI GATE webinar page. It's in the archive section under today's date, so it should be right at the very top. So feel free to do that as well. Next up, we're going to have Rachel Cason and Trish Paliado, and they are here with us, and they're just going to grab the screen, and we're going to get started on that too. So there's some awesome stuff happening in the chat. Please feel free to add your thoughts too.
Hi, I'm Trish Paliado, the Director of Student Welfare and Attendance from Vancouver Public Schools. And Rachel Cason will join me in just a minute and take over the presentation, but I will just talk at you a little bit first. They've generously titled this, "What does a successful program look like?" I think we still have lots of work to do, but we're moving in the right direction, so I appreciate that title for us. Our attendance work falls under our equity and excellence work for our school district, and we're part of the integrated student supports, and that is made up of our student welfare and attendance team, our safe and supportive schools team, and our family engagement through our family community resource centers, all partnered to provide integrated student supports. And with that group, we create equity and excellence plans each year as work plans for our district. Parts of our plan for safe and supportive initiative is that we create inviting and emotionally safe places for students to learn, which to me is tied directly into attendance, because we want students to feel comfortable being at school so that they will want to be there. It is also part of our strategic plan for our 2020 key performance indicators that 90% of students are attending 90% of the time in our district. Quite a lofty goal, but that is something all schools in our district are working towards. And then last year we had started a district-wide attendance campaign themed "Attendance Matters, You Matter," and then we had little taglines, "See You at School." So that was just some of the work we've been doing as an entire district and really focusing our efforts on attendance district-wide. So this is just some data to show we feel like we're moving in the right direction. So this is data from our 2010-11 school year to the 2017-18 school year. And this is just showing that every one of our groups, kindergarten through 12th, by race, ethnicity, and gender, have been improving their attendance. You will notice, though, we still have a ways to go to meet that 90% mark, but everybody is moving in the right direction. We also have similar growth for our K-12 students in special populations. So our ELL students, our special ed students, and our low-income students also are showing growth towards our 90% goal. But for me, as I said, we're not quite at the 90% mark yet for a lot of students, but we also have still disproportionality happening within our groups of students. So this chart kind of looks at that information two ways. I'm going to kind of point to the chart on the left, at the bottom row for 2018. We can see for elementary grades, kindergarten through 5th grade, our not free and reduced lunch students have met the market, are hitting 90% of those students are attending 90% of the time. We also have close our white students, our non-ELL students, and our non-SPED students. But all of those other students are not quite there. And so there's some disproportionality happening, that they're not all meeting attendance at the same rate. We have some pictures thrown in of students from our buildings. So these are some students from our freshman intervention program that we've been working with to try to build good relationships for them to want to be at school. When we're looking at our middle school students and their attendance, we have similar rates, but also a little more disproportionality. So the group, again, our non-free and reduced lunch group still has the best attendance with 6%, but you can see that some of our other groups, especially our SPED group of students, is only attending at 66% of the rate of the other students. So there's greater gap at the middle school ages. And this is more work from that freshman intervention group where we are doing part of like some community service projects and really building relationships with adult mentors who come into the schools to work with the students as well, just to really get them involved in their school and being included in the school culture and environment. And then our high schools, we have our 9th to 10th grade. You will see that we have low rates. So I'm guessing that everyone has similar rates of attendance with their high schoolers. As soon as they seem to be mobile and have cars, they tend to come to school less. But again, our highest attending group is, again, our non-free and reduced lunch group. But we have, again, some extreme gaps in disproportionality, especially with our African-American students, our free and reduced lunch students, and our ELL students, in particular at the high school level. 48% of those students are attending 90% of the time. So we have a lot of work to do in our special populations groups and with race ethnicity to work on that disproportionality. And our goal is, to get all of our kids to graduate. And this is an example of some of our graduates from our alternative program. And that's a really important part of what we do. And what Rachel does is really looking to reconnect students to school in ways that maybe comprehensive school wasn't working for them, but there are other programs that will. And it's really just to get all kids an opportunity to cross the stage. So we currently take a multi-tiered approach, very similar to what Krissy shared with OSPI's tiered system. I guess our big focus now is with Tier 1 supports. I think our district did a great job working on Tier 2 supports for like discipline, attendance, all kinds of supports for students, but we hadn't done a lot at the Tier 1 level. And so that's where we've really been focusing our work the past 2 years. So when we look at Tier 1, these are things that we're putting in place for all students and to really create a culture and climate of attendance. That's just the thing we do is come to school. It's kind of the message we want to send. One of the ways we started doing that is we built what's called a principal attendance toolkit, which is one of the resources that will be shared with you. And that was created through an AmeriCorps Vista position that we had. So we had a 3-year position with an AmeriCorps Vista. And the first year, the Vista basically spent that year researching attendance programs, did a lot of work with Attendance Works to find out, resources and things that worked really well around attendance on the federal level, and then spent time doing focus groups and interviewed 400 families in our school district to find out what their barriers were to attending school. And then she created a resource for us, this attendance toolkit, that really helped give information about the research, about programs that work, interventions that schools could use, and then just a good snapshot of what it was our own students were facing as far as barriers of getting to school. So that was a really great starting point for us in that Tier 1 work. We also started just looking at our data a lot more, monitoring our attendance rates by schools and grade levels, and work to engage parents more in our conversations around attendance and just reaching out to parents with messaging around the importance of attendance. So just the idea was just really create messaging everywhere. One school that we have in particular has really gone above and beyond with their attendance messaging. They started the sandwich board sign out front every day that many of our schools now also do, but they would list, here's our goal for attendance today, and here's where we are with our attendance numbers. They also have their goal for tardies and what the number is, so that every day when parents and students drive up to school or walk up to the school building, they see what the rates are for the day, and it's just an incentive and reminder to them about the importance of attendance. They also created a parent volunteer program called the Padres, where they have just parent volunteers who, many of them speak Spanish, just stand outside the building and greet families as they come to school. So they'll, say hi to people just driving up to drop their kids off. They greet students as they come in, invite people to come in and have coffee. But that program itself has just been a huge success and really makes parents and students feel part of the community, connected to the school. And that's just been a great resource. That was all parent volunteers that helped do that. Our second tier is more of what's happening at the school level for smaller groups of students or maybe individual students. That's mostly done by our attendance team. So every school has an attendance in their building where they're looking at attendance rates for students, we're really focusing more on that 80 to 90% group with that tier 2 strategies and trying to see what kinds of things can we do to just bump them into the 90% attenders group. So a lot of times it's matching those students up one-on-one with a mentor in the building, a staff person who calls home, sends positive emails to families. They also help create intervention plans for students, just look at incentives to help get them to school. And we really make sure at that point we're partnering up with our family community resource centers and removing any barriers for basic needs that students may be having. And then our last tier is our tier 3 work, and that really is what we look at as community support or wraparound support for students. So tier 3 is kind of when schools are they've done all they can and they need more help, then they're getting some outside support. And that's things that are being provided by the district level, ESD, and community level. And Rachel's going to talk about our tier 3 support in just a little bit. So I just wanted to give some examples of some of the different tiered interventions we've been doing that have been pretty exciting for us. So the first one is we created 2 years ago what we call the Attendance Prize Patrol. I like to think of us as like the Publishers Clearinghouse, showing up and busting in on a school and a classroom and celebrating attendance. So this is a group that was mobilized from the district office, and on Fridays we would go to different schools in the district and look for classes that have perfect attendance that day, and we'd surprise one of those classes with perfect attendance, and we'd give prizes to all the students. We'd have a prize and recognition for the teacher, because we know that kids come to school because of their relationships with their teacher. And then we take pictures for our social media and then just kind of spread the word that way. So it was just a really fun way to celebrate attendance. Our purpose for doing that is that many schools were doing recognition for improved attendance, good attendance, celebrating different classroom challenges, but we really wanted to be able to just hit kids that maybe only came to school that one day that week who would never be recognized any other way. And our message was really just, when you come to school, some cool, fun things can happen. And so it's important to be there. And that was who we were trying to get, is on those days when we show up, just anybody who was there that day. So we were able to we visited 36 schools the past 2 years, 162 classrooms, and 5,000 students received prizes that had our little attendance message slogan on it. A nice benefit as well of doing this is we, got a team together to do these surprise visits, and we pulled people from our district office. And so all of these different departments attended: fiscal, purchasing, human resources, transportation, security, came with us on these visits. And so it was great for people to get out of the district office, go into the schools, and see the impact of their work in the school building as well. If you are looking at the PowerPoint on your own later, we do have a link on there to watch a video of the Prize Patrol in action. It's kind of fun, so if you want to see what that looks like, you could do that. I did want to mention that we have done the Prize Patrol for the past 2 years, but we are no longer doing it this year. And the reason behind that is we've had some cuts in funding and staffing cuts as well, but also a lot of the schools have taken on doing these kind of celebrations themselves. And that was really the idea, was to just get everybody really excited about attendance, sharing the same messaging around attendance, and just kind of a kickstart program for the work they're going to do in their own buildings. It served its purpose, and now they're taking over some of that in their own schools. For tier 2, I have 2 different things I was going to share with the tier 2 work. Is we started something called the Attendance Project Initiative 3 years ago, and that was partnered with ESD 112 and a grant we got through them for Kaiser to work on chronic absenteeism. We are one partner in, it's a multi-county grant in doing this work around chronic absenteeism. So we had started our first year with 6 schools, and we looked at our 2 high schools that had the poorest attendance rates, and then we chose those 2 schools, 2 middle schools that fed into those schools, and then 2 elementary schools that fed in as well. And we basically met every month and talked about attendance initiatives we were doing, really focused on tier 1 work and what we needed to tweak at the schools in order to do that work well. We used a lot of the resources from Attendance Works to help us in building our effective attendance teams, how to evaluate ourselves on the work that we were doing and where we were in the process. And then we had a good year, and all of the schools that participated actually had increased attendance that year. So last year we expanded to include 6 more schools in that work and continue to meet monthly. We also really started diving in deeply to the data and looking at the disproportionality in attendance and discussing what was happening at our different schools, like why one school might have better luck with different groups around attendance than others, and what kinds of things we could share. So it's really a group around sharing resources, looking at data, and then holding each other accountable for the work we're doing. It's just been a great resource for schools. We also started this year doing a book study using the School Leader's Guide to Tackling Attendance Challenges, and then having just discussion on what things we see happening in our own schools and what ideas we can employ to improve attendance. I'm excited this year we're adding 6 more schools into that group. So the first group that started, they're continuing every year, and so they're continuing to get support and resources shared with them. But now we'll have 18 of our 36 schools part of this attendance project initiative this year. One other Tier 2 support I'd like to address, which was kind of one that happened by chance that we weren't planning on, but it has to do with the new truancy laws. And we were, required to start doing assessments for students at the secondary level who had a number of unexcused absences. So we do this assessment based on when students hit their 4th unexcused absence. And we ended up creating an assessment with our county. So all the schools in our county use the same assessment. And we didn't at this point want to use the WARNS assessment this early on for students. Our ESD uses WARNS when students get to the case management level after having had a petition filed in court. So they're using it there, which seemed a more appropriate time to use WARNS. So we created something to get more sort of basic information about our students and what barriers they were having. One of the amazing effects of this is we actually got really great data on a school level for students on barriers they were facing. So this is just a sample of one set of questions we asked students. This was from one of our middle schools, kind of around health questions. And so the way this reads is that 59% of our students said that they were too tired to get up on time. So that was the red part of the bar meant that was often true and yellow was somewhat true. But for this school, 59% of their students were struggling with that piece of just getting up on time. 75% of the students that had been surveyed said they often don't feel well enough to go to school. So that was some really good information for the school to have and what it was that our students were struggling with. Sometimes it was anxiety as well as just unwellness feeling and what was causing that and what we need to do to help families. And then 38% of those students said they have trouble sleeping. So what's really nice is we can pull individual reports for schools. We can look at district data to see what barriers our families and students are facing. And then they can also dive down and look at individual student data as well to determine what a student may need during those attendance teams. So it's been great information for us.
I'm Rachel, and I work as a student success coordinator in the Department of Student Welfare and Attendance here at Vancouver Public Schools. The purpose of my position is to re-engage students who have dropped out and provide them with options while also addressing any barriers that they might be facing to engagement. But I also work with schools on dropout prevention interventions. And I just want to take this opportunity to share a Tier 3 attendance intervention that has had impact and value in building a culture of attendance and engagement in our district. And this intervention is called RE3. The RE3 project stands for Reconnect, Recommit, and Reengage. We took 2 pre-existing interventions and combined those efforts and ideas to increase the number of students who could be reached on a consistent basis and at an accessible location. Those 2 interventions were our community truancy boards, which ran twice a month at our district office. And then the other intervention was our re-engagement fair, which was a tabling event that connected disengaged youth to alternative options, job skills programs, and resources. And this was held once a year also at our district office. Neither one of these events was really well attended due to accessibility and lack of connection or relationship for the students to get connected to such an event. RE3 gives students grades 6 through 12 an opportunity to commit to an alternative education option or job skills program that may better suit their individual needs, engage with the truancy board, and then also get connected to resources that can address any barriers that the student and family may be facing. Those parties that help to make this intervention run effectively are the schools themselves, who can refer students to attend, volunteer as truancy board members, and then provide their buildings for the intervention itself, which helps with accessibility for families and students. The Department of Student Welfare and Attendance and the Truancy Project of ESD 112, who serves as host, and we run the event. And then our community truancy board members, who are comprised of administrators, counselors, teachers, all of whom are either current employees or retirees, school advocates, school kitchen staff, mental health providers, We have a few folks from the Housing Authority, and we're working to get a health care provider on board as well. Hopefully our partnership with ESD 112 and the Kaiser grant will aid in that. And then our FCRCs, our Family Community Resource Coordinators are also in attendance. And then alternative program coordinators and community agencies come and share options on a rotating schedule. So a glance at what the event looks like. Students can be invited several ways. Most are invited by the Truancy Project as a step in the truancy process. Admin can use it as a discipline intervention in lieu of a punitive action. Counselors can invite those students they fear are close to disengaging. Community partners who might be working with a youth that is not engaged with school can also invite students, or our department, Student Welfare and Attendance, could invite any number of students we work with on a daily basis. Students and parents are greeted, and students sign themselves in. Once the event starts, a brief presentation is given about the importance of attendance, why they were invited, and what students should hope to gain from attending. We provide food. It's a very family-friendly event, and it's held around dinner time. And then students are able to meet with a small team of community volunteers, the truancy boards, and then students can speak with myself also and get connected to alternative programs as well as the FCRCs, the Family Community Resource Coordinators, to get connected to resources. So what are the takeaways from RE3? Students and parents are able to make a connection to a program or resources. They can create a plan to move forward with their education and build relationships with all those stakeholders who provide support and resources for students. And then also parents can see the alliance that they have with school staff and community partners and just build on that relationship piece. So moving forward, we've begun to run elementary boards in the same fashion, but we're focusing more on parent resources and support. These boards are also run at target elementary schools in the late afternoon. So again, around dinner time, we also provide food, these events as well. We found that parents bring the whole family, and we're seeing many of the same families that we have come across at our RE3 boards. So the hope is early intervention, engaging with parents and students early to help in navigating barriers, implementing practices and habits around attendance and engagement, and building healthy and positive relationships with schools and communities.
Cultural responsiveness is a huge piece of what we've been focusing on to try to really create welcoming, safe environments for our students and their families. So we do training for our staff on cultural responsiveness, understanding their own implicit biases, how their own culture impacts how they interact with students and other staff members, and just being really aware of what we bring to the table and how it may affect our students and their families. And so that training has been done with all of our front office clerks, our attendance, discipline, enrollment clerks. We've been doing that work with paraeducators, bus drivers, district resource officers, as well as administrators and teachers in our buildings. We never know what it is that students have to go through to get through the doors that day, and so it's just super important for us that we always welcome students into the building and be glad that we see them and make sure that they're feeling safe and included in our schools. So thank you for letting us take some time to present our side of what we've been doing here in Vancouver.
It's awesome to hear your story. We do have some questions from the audience. Do you have some ideas specifically for high school incentives? That was one that came up.
One of the things that we talked about doing for high school incentive, we did some lanyards one year, but we really wanted to do those pop sockets that go on the back of the cell phones, because those are very popular with kids and adults alike, and just putting our attendance logo on there. And if you can have, I know some of the schools have done their own, and they get little gift certificates donated from like Subway and just some of the local restaurants around, which are always a big hit for students who go off campus during lunch. But other times they do things where they just do classroom parties. So students might be invited to a pizza party or like get to skip tutorial time and get extra lunch time during the school day for one day during the week. So there's things you can give away, but you can also just reward kids with maybe an off-campus pass that day for lunch or extended lunch time, some things like that don't cost you money necessarily to do.
Thanks, Trish. And then there was another question about how you funded some of those incentives and prizes.
Basically, most of the funding came through our Vancouver School District Foundation. They were really interested in those attendance efforts and how we could support that. We also had some donors when we had our AmeriCorps Vista who was able to go out and find some partnerships for us And so we were able to get some donations for like some of the teacher prizes that we gave out. I think that was pretty much where our funding came from for that. We printed posters for each classroom stuff. That was just done through our communications department. And then I printed things as part of my budget. So I had some budget for printing materials and supplies. And then ESD paid for like our books when we had our book study as part of that Kaiser grant money. That helped fund some of resources for us for that.
And then Trish, when people answered the question about their biggest challenges, a number of folks identified some challenges, either connecting with families. A lot of folks are talking about like through the BECA process and actually hearing from families. A lot of questions around family engagement. Do you have any tips or thoughts on that?
I can give a little bit, and then I'll let Rachel give some input too, since she does a lot of that work. But I mean, one of the things that we do is we have field attendance specialists that work out of my department, their job is really to help do the assessments for students and reach out to families for the schools. So we have one of our people spent a lot of time last year just doing home visits. So they would go and visit with families and try to connect there. If they weren't responding to our phone calls or letters we were sending out, we would actually go out to the home and do visits. I think one of the pieces is at the elementary level, we started doing we called them the attendance boards. So it was for kids who were chronically absent or truant, or for their families. We sent an invitation to that as this is a step before you go through the court process to try to intervene early. And I think the letters were intimidating enough that they wanted to be there instead of going to court, so that we had some success with that. But once they got there, they realized like we're really there to help them, not to punish them, and we're trying to avoid them going through the court process. That's always our mindset, and our belief is we're trying to help families and remove barriers for them any way we can, or get them engaged in other programs. So I'll let Rich talk a little more about that.
Yeah, for me, it's really just meeting families where they're at and being very flexible and accessible. So, going to the home and meeting with them so we can have a conversation about attendance and engagement. If it's more comfortable for them to meet me at a coffee shop, I'm willing to do that. And, I just really let them know that I'm here to be their advocate, their aid, and meeting them where they're at.
And there's some great information in the chat. I love that people are offering up what they're doing and having that discussion going on the side. That's wonderful. Do you have a copy of this assessment? I think that we've talked about that a little bit, but if you do want a copy, you can email Krissy or Rachel or Trish. Yeah. And do you guys have any feelings about later start for school time? Did you do any work around that? Did you push school back at all for any of your buildings or?
We did not do that. I know Evergreen Public Schools did that, who's also in Vancouver with us. We've been kind of monitoring how they're doing. I think, part of that is it changes bus transportation as well. It's a huge impact. So I think we're waiting a bit to see how it plays out around the state a little bit more before we kind of jump on board with that. It's definitely things that have been talked about, but we just haven't made that move.
Yeah, I've seen that across the state this year. It's a hot topic to kind of move back school times, and we're all kind of waiting to see how it went. And it looks like Renee says that the later start time has been really successful in her district. So maybe follow up with Renee. We do have an evaluation. We're going to give you guys some resources in just a moment, but we want to make sure that we get some information. So we're going to launch our evaluation poll. If you do want to take kind of the full evaluation, you can always do that. It's on most of the reminders for our webinars and our follow-up emails, and it's on the Gate Equity webinar page. So if you ever have ideas about who you would like to see on a webinar, which presenters or topics, or if you want to change the time, anything like that, we're always interested in your feedback. And it's really helped us a lot to make this webinar better and better every year. So we always appreciate that voice from you guys.
I do want to take a moment to plug this afternoon's webinar. Since there were so many questions about engaging the family, I hope you all can join us this afternoon. If you can't actually join us this afternoon, to watch the webinar at a later date when we talk about attendance cafes as a way of building a relationship with family and hearing from them directly about the things that are impacting their students' attendance. It's a plug for that.
Yeah, it's a great strategy, and I'm excited to learn more. Catherine Page is really knowledgeable about what that looks like, and you can get kind of boots on the ground information about how to set it up for your own community. And Krissy, do you want to tell us a little bit about the resources that we have here?
Yes, so many of you asked about Vancouver's Principal Toolkit. We will work on getting that ADA'd and posted to our website. You can also contact Trish and Rachel for that. I wanted to highlight here the tool, a screening tool created through research done by the University of Florida, and it's called the Reasons for Chronic Absenteeism Screener. Click on this link. It's a free screener specifically for identifying the reasons that a student might be chronically absent. I also wanted to highlight that Attendance Works has created a year-long planning tool. They have some great resources there for thinking about highlighting attendance throughout the whole school year. Lastly, our OSPI attendance page has been revamped, has some new resources, and please always feel free to check out Attendance Works. They've got a lot of information and resources. We are heading into September, which is Attendance Awareness Month. And first, I want to say that we have a number of print materials, some buttons that you can order through our website. Many folks ordered back in June, and we are working on getting those orders out as we speak. And if you have not ordered materials, we will be making that order form available hopefully that first week in September. I also want to encourage you, if you are in a district where your district administration has prioritized attendance, sign up for the Attendance Works Superintendent Call to Action and let the nation know that it's a priority and you're working on it. Lastly, if you are interested in receiving regular updates from OSPI, you can sign up for the attendance newsletter, and the link is here.
Another resource that we've developed is our technical assistance button. So we want you to be able to connect to a real live person to help answer any of the questions that you have. So if you want to learn more, you can connect to a program or get some fresh ideas. We're here for you. And all you have to do is click on the button, and an OSSI staffer will help you get whatever you need. So take advantage of that. If you have questions, if we don't have the answer, we want to help you get it. I do have our contact information up here. So if you still have questions after the webinar is over, these are available on our slides, and you can grab those email addresses. They're also in the chat there for you so that you can contact us for any of the things that you need. And we're coming to a close. We'd like to give credit where it's due. If you liked an image from the Gate Equity webinar, we use images from our schools with their permission, and we're featuring most of our images come from the Noun Project. What were the big ideas you got from today? What are your next leadership moves? What did you value in the presentation? And what questions do you still have? Thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully we see you this afternoon when we talk about community cafes.